Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to The Discriminating Gamer, the board game review show that often wonders what Merritt Buttrick wouldn't have done if he hadn't used proto-matter in the Genesis Matrix. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let's take a look at Scorpius Freighter from AEG. In Scorpius Freighter from AEG, 2 to 4 players take on the roles of various space smugglers as they try to defy a fascist space government. It's all about space, baby. Essentially, the game board is 3 rondels. 3 rondels that orbit different planets that have different actions attached to them. They each have one spaceship that is on each of those rondels. Now, at the beginning of the game, players are going to select crew members. Essentially, you get 4 crew cards, and there's different kinds of colored crew cards, and they have different abilities. And you place these crew cards beneath the player board, at the bottom of your player board, but you have them sticking out a little bit. The player board also has a grid where you can place different tiles. You start the game with a cockpit, as well as areas where you can hold different colored cubes as well. Now, on your turn, what you're going to do is move a rondel. Now, your 2 leftmost crew members, you push them up into the underneath the player board, and that activates them. You can do 1 or 2 to move 1 or 2 spaces of any of the 3 different rondels. You can move them that number of spaces and then take whatever action it is that your ship lands on. Now, one of the things you can do is meet an informant. Now, if you meet an informant, you can actually take your crew card and flip it over. Both sides have printed text of what that crew's ability is, but it's only until it's flipped over that you can take advantage of that crew's ability. And these are going to be some very powerful mechanisms throughout the game, so you're going to want to go ahead and at least get a couple of these guys flipped over at some point during the game. You can expand the storage capacity of your tile. You can essentially try to expand the storage from one of the areas. Now, there's a hand limit. This is your skill that's printed on there. You've got to make sure you're within your skill. You've got that many skill to cover it, which one you want to take. But you can take that and you can put it in your ship, and then that gives you more resources that you can carry during the course of the game. You can also upgrade your fighter. Now, if you upgrade your fighter, again, you're going to look at your skill, make sure you got enough skill to cover it, but you put that on there, so later when you land on the rondel that's going to activate that, you get those bonuses from that upgraded freighter. You can pick up cargo. Essentially, if you move to certain areas, you can actually pick up that certain type of cargo from the area, provided you have enough storage space for that specific type of cargo. You can operate your freighter. Now, operating your freighter lets you activate all of the tiles you have with upgrades. So all those upgrades come into play, and then boom, you get those advantages. You can make a side deal. Essentially, side deals are collecting points at the bottom of the board. You can, again, if you've got enough hand for it, enough skill, you can go ahead and take a side deal. You've got to pay for it, and you set it there kind of beside your player board. There's a little space for it, and those are going to be worth points at the end of the game. You can fulfill a contract. Essentially, you have contracts at the top of the board, and the contracts have different rows. If you can essentially pay to get one of those rows, you can take the contract and set it next to your board, and then what you can do is try to pay for the whole thing. Once you pay for the whole thing, you can actually, next time you get a fulfilled contract, you can move it down to the kind of completed contracts, and that's going to be worth a lot of points and other various bonuses throughout the game. Now, as you're doing this, as you're going along the rondels, taking the actions, every time you pass a checkpoint, and each rondel has a checkpoint, you have to take one of the cubes off of your ship and essentially bribe the freighter. Now, these ships that are moving around the rondels have spaces for 6 cubes in them. And depending on the number of players, you're going to try to put a number of cubes on there, and that's going to trigger endgame. For instance, if any one ship gets 6 cubes at the end of that round, that is the endgame for a 4-player game. But you're going to go ahead and you're going to put these cubes in there. Now, if you don't have any cubes, you just take one from the supply and put it in there, and that's just kind of the timing mechanism for the game. So essentially, you're going to go around and around, you're going to be expanding, building up your ship, you're going to be collecting and spending various cargo as you do so, you're going to be upgrading your crew, and you're going to be moving past those checkpoints and putting more cargo on those kind of government freighters. Once they fill up, then you got one more round, and then whoever has the most points wins Scorpius Freighter. So Scorpius Freighter is a pretty interesting game. The idea of 3 rondels is actually very cool. It's a very interesting take on this kind of a game. It was very, very interesting. You played rondel games in the past, which are not generally my favorite kinds of games, but this year I think it was done really well because there's always something to do. It seems like on one of the rondels there's always something you can take advantage of. A lot of times it's not optimum, it's not what you want to do, it's not what you need to do, but there's always something to do to keep you interested. So there's never a turn where you feel like you're getting screwed. Well, you always feel like you're getting screwed, but I mean, there's never a turn that feels like you can't do anything. So that's good. The game is interesting. It's got a lot of little moving mechanics, and it keeps you invested. It keeps you interested. I should point out too, there's a bit of a learning curve with the iconography. It takes a while because some of the icons look similar, and so it takes a while just to say, oh, okay, that's that icon, that's what that does. That's that icon, that's what that does. So there is a little bit of a learning curve there. It's not bad, but it's there. Just be aware of it. But we go ahead. You play the game. And it's for me, it is very Euro-y, and it just wasn't really my cup of tea. I didn't hate this game. I just felt like it wasn't something that really blew me away. Now, I can see what's cool about it with building your ship and customizing your ship, and like I say, taking the different rondel actions, which I enjoyed. And then there's, of course, the different upgrades you can do, which make it interesting. But it was almost kind of a thing where there was so much going on, it made it difficult to... It seemed like you were always looking at the game tactically instead of strategically. You're always looking at kind of the smaller picture, what can I do now, without really being able to build a long-term strategy. At least that was my impression. Maybe other people have had a different experience with it. So I wasn't a huge fan of this game. I don't think it's a bad game. I think some people may get a kick out of it. It just wasn't for me. So the recommendation for the Discriminating Gamer for Scorpius Freighter is try it before you buy it. Thank you for joining us today on The Discriminating Gamer. As always, we ask you to please leave a comment for us on YouTube, on Board Game Geek, on our Facebook page, or on thediscriminatinggamer.com. We ask you to please like us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter. We are The Discriminating Gamer, and I gotta tell you, ladies and gentlemen, Genesis allowed is not, is planet forbidden!
Somebody help me on my feet again.